this afternoon, To The Barn chats with something a little bit different, and starting off our professional series, we are here with Ellen Shipton, who is a solicitor who happens to specialise in equestrian law, and she's from Ellis Jones, based in Dorset. Welcome, Ellen.
Hi, Tara. Nice to speak to you.
So we can get to know you a bit more as an equestrian first. We can deal with the lawyer bit later. Tell us a little bit about the horse that you have, what you do with him, her, how long you've had them for. And I think what everybody would love to know is, how do you fit your riding around your work?
Yes, of course. So my horse is called Secoy. So he's a chestnut thoroughbred ex-racehorse. He's about 17 hands, and I've had him since he was a little baby. So I've had him since he was 5, and he's now 21, 22 in May. I'll have had him 18 years in May, which is just incredible. I just still sometimes can't believe it. So now he's getting a bit older. We mostly do hacking and just have a bit of fun. I try and kind of listen to him and what he wants to do. So it's a bit more of a dictatorship as he's getting older, I think. But yeah, we just mostly do hacking, a bit of jumping here and there. Sometimes if he's getting a bit too enthusiastic, we might do the odd schooling session. But yeah, overall we just try and have a bit of fun. He does.
That's brilliant that at his age he still, wants to have a bit of fun and be a bit cheeky with you.
Oh yes, he. Everyone that meets him tells me that he does not look his age, and he certainly does not act his age. He's still just the same as he was 10 years ago. He hasn't changed a bit. I actually went for a hack at the weekend, and he just pretty much wants to gallop the whole way, which obviously would be his idea of fun, and perhaps isn't quite as fun for me. But yes, he's amazing. I'm really lucky. So yes, that's Seafoy. And then I also share another chestnut thoroughbred. I have a thing for them. And I do, so with troops, I do a bit of cross country and jumping. So we're hoping to get out to our first one-day event in June, which is really exciting.
Oh, so that's brilliant news. So tell me, obviously with a thoroughbred, had he raced before then?
Yes, he had. So he raced when he was very young. So he was French originally, and he just wasn't good enough, basically, which is good for me. But yes, I think he's naturally very clumsy. So I wonder whether that's got something to do with it. But yes, he trained as he trained over the hurdles initially. So that's why he loves jumping, I think.
Well, no, it's just brilliant to know that these horses, if they are no good for racing, they're still a really loving home and a really long-term loving home for them. I think that the Retraining of Racehorses program that we have in this country is a really good program.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. And I would 100% get another ex-racehorse as my next horse, because they're just amazing. They've all got personalities and individual personalities as well, and they're just really, on the whole, obviously there are exceptions, but on the whole they're very genuine and willing as horses, and it's just nice to know that you can give them a nice home after they've done their job, whether they're good at it or not.
Yeah, exactly. So being a busy solicitor, which is not exactly a part-time job, how do you fit in 2 horses around all of that?
Yeah, so it can be quite challenging. It's easier. I mean, it's getting easier at this time of year because obviously the days are a bit longer and there's a bit more light. In the winter, it can be quite difficult. I mean, I tend to, so at the moment, I'm probably riding about 4 times a week. Obviously, I can't cram that into a weekend. So in the winter, sometimes I have to take a hit and not ride as much. Or otherwise, I'm quite lucky with my firm that they're quite accepting of flexible working. So sometimes I would get up early, do a few hours of work, log off, go for a quick hack, and then come back and pick up again. So I'm really lucky that they're supportive with that. But yes, I do think obviously if you really love something, then you
find the way, don't you? Yeah. I totally agree. So when did you start riding? How did you get into it?
Yes, so I started riding when I was 5. So when I was very little, my mum has always loved horses and she had ponies growing up. So I think she was kind of keen maybe for me to get into horses. And I always did love horses, and I had my first lesson when I was 5 on a pony called Titus. I still remember. So that's how I first got into it. And then shortly after, so I think I was having weekly lessons, but it wasn't like a group lesson, it was more just on the lunge going round. And then shortly after,
and that didn't put you off lunge lessons?
No. No, it didn't. And then shortly after I started riding, my parents moved to France, and when I got out there, I went to the local riding school, and it was like a whole new world. It was really exciting, and it's very more traditional there in the fact that it's very much a case of you would turn up, you go and get the ponies yourself with all your friends, and you tie them up and groom them, and it's a very kind of social thing. And I spend my Saturday afternoons there, and I probably had weekly lessons from about the age of 5 until 15. So it was really something that I obviously enjoyed, and yeah, that's how I got into it, and I haven't looked back really. I've never had a break, and I don't ever plan on. I know other things happen, but hopefully I'll be riding till I'm in my 90s.
Well, if the Queen's anything to go by, that's, we have a good role model there. She still enjoys a hack out.
Yeah, exactly.
So what is it about riding that you particularly love, and especially with what can be quite a stressful job at times? Do you find it? How do you find that? Does it give you a release? What enjoyment?
Yeah, I think what I love about riding is just like the freedom and the fact that you can just get out, and when you're having a nice ride, you don't think about anything else. And there can be other things, other forms of exercise kind of do the same thing sometimes, but sometimes you might just pop out for a walk at lunchtime and you can't get something out of your head, whereas I find I can go up to the yard, get on, and I can have such a great time that I found I've spent the whole ride, beaming, and I haven't thought at all about the stresses and the emails and the phone calls, and every other stressful part of your life. So I think that's the best thing about it, and also the fact that you can really build a bond with a horse. I really enjoy that, and even when I was little at the riding school, there was always a few select ponies that I wanted to spend time with, because I've always been interested in having that kind of relationship with them. So yeah, I'd say those are the two main aspects: the freedom and the release, and then the relationship that you can build with them as well.
It is completely different than, as you say, just going for a run. You're with another being that you do have that relationship with, so it does mean that they deserve your attention when you're with them. And so I completely understand. It's what I love about riding. People tell you, you should go and meditate, it's good for you, but actually I find when I'm with my horses, because you have to clear your mind of everything else, to focus on these chaps who are giving us such pleasure.
And they're so emotionally intelligent as well, that especially more highly strung ones, so like my horse, he absolutely knows if there's something wrong. So if I'm in quite a panicky mood, he just feeds off of that. So I always have to think positive thoughts and feel positive and smile to try and keep that that mindset, and then it kind of flows through to them, as opposed to if I get on and I'm stressed already and I can't let go of it, then I know it's not going to be as good of a ride.
Exactly. And it's not fair on them, is it?
No, because they can pick up on it. And
Great. So that's horses. Tell us a little bit about how and why you became a solicitor.
Yes, so I always wanted to have a job where I could help people. So that was always kind of what I wanted from a job. And I know that sounds quite vague, because I feel like when you're young and at sixth form, you don't really necessarily know what you wanted to do. So I knew I wanted to do something where I could help people and make a difference in some way. Obviously, that's quite a few jobs fit into that, arguably. But then I decided to do a law degree, because I thought then it still kind of gets me a bit of time to think about what I really want to do. And then whilst I was doing my degree, which was quite tricky and not enjoyable all of the time, I did a few stints at various law firms doing some work experience, and then I thought, actually, I think I would like to do this, and it's a nice way of helping people. and here I am.
Here you are.
Yeah.
And so how did you start advising on equestrian matters? Was it just a natural thing? Did you have a call? Did someone in the firm say, oh, I think Ellen's got a horse, maybe she knows about this? How did it all happen?
Yeah, so it's quite funny actually. I've been thinking about it for a while. I think I'm quite a naturally ambitious person. So as I was thinking, obviously, of combining my passion with horses, with my passion for law, it kind of seemed like a no-brainer in that I was already in the equestrian community and already had an idea of horses and the horse world, and I could combine that with my legal knowledge. And I had a look around, and there weren't really that many people offering it in the local area, and it's not really it's still quite a niche area. So yeah, I started doing a lot of research, and then my boss and my firm in general have been really supportive with it, and they've kind of allowed me to run free with it. So yeah,
well, presumably they're benefiting as well.
yeah, of course. But yes, it kind of just came from an idea I had. I thought it would be a good thing to do, and obviously because I'm so interested in horses, it makes the law more interesting, because you obviously have to find something interesting to find it enjoyable. So
but I'm sure your clients, it must be so much more comforting for them, because it's quite distressing if you do have to ask someone about legal advice to do with something that you're passionate about. But to have someone who has empathy and understanding like you has got to help an awful lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it really helps people to just explain what's happened without having to explain every individual phrase or terminology. For example, the horse was really spooky, which someone who wasn't horsey might not understand. And I've had a few chats with various clients who they started saying something and said, oh, started explaining what they said, and then they said, oh no, I don't need to do that because and I think it's just easier, because then they can just explain what happened and I know exactly what they're talking about, and there's not that miscommunication. Obviously if someone came to me and started telling me in-depth knowledge about motorbikes, and I probably wouldn't have a clue. So I think it is comforting to know that someone knows what you're talking about.
For sure. No, definitely. So of the clients who come to you, what are the most common equestrian legal disputes that you see, and what sort of general advice would you have for people to maybe avoid that situation happening to them?
Yeah, so probably the most common, it's quite wide, but the most common issue would be the horse being missold in one way or another.
Right.
Which, often is really sad, because obviously people don't intend for that to happen, and they end up with a horse that's unsuitable for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it can be something relatively small and perhaps something objectively minor, and just maybe a behavioural issue. I don't know, can't have his feet picked out, which isn't a big deal in the grand scheme of things, but then that's something on the minor end of the scale that wouldn't necessarily be that much of an issue, but it can kind of escalate to the point where the horse has been sold and turns out it's completely lame, or the pony's been sold as a happy hacker but actually she's terrified of cars. And
which could be quite dangerous, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think normally the point at which people look to take it further is when there's an element of danger, whether it's themselves or their children or someone else. As soon as you're being put in danger, or being put into a situation that you weren't expecting, that's when it's just not very nice, because as we all know, horses can be very dangerous, and it's not
in the wrong situation.
Yes, exactly.
So what is your sort of I know every case is different, but do you have a general piece of advice to people before they buy a horse, as to a little checklist that they need to think about before just falling in love with this animal and sort of letting the heart rule the head?
Yeah, I think that's probably the most difficult thing, that I think a lot of people get swept away with the romantic idea of the horse, and whether that be just the romantic idea of having a horse full stop, or that particular horse that's gorgeous, and you fall in love with as soon as you see it, but actually it's completely unsuitable, and not allowing that to take over. I think if I were to give kind of general advice, I'd make sure that you have other people with you to try and, talk sense into you from that perspective, to try and avoid that situation, because we all know how easy it is. I mean, we do it with anything from, I don't know, what we fancy eating, to an outfit, to a horse. You see something, you think, oh, I love that, and then you get it. So I think it's worth having professionals around you that you trust, and not just the vet when it does the vetting, but maybe your trainer or someone that you have lessons with regularly, or even a friend who has a bit of knowledge about horses, that you can kind of bounce things off of each other. I think that really helps.
And you keep coming back to that word suitability, and so I think what you're saying is that people really have to have in mind what are their capabilities,
yes.
and what do they want the horse to do, and communicate that to the friend or trainer who's with them, and make sure they're the sort of the independent third party who's being your sense check.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think it's really easy to get embroiled in or just carried away with a horse, and I think it does make sense to have someone there that can help you with that. On the flip side, on the more legal side of things, my advice would be to get everything in writing, just as much as you can in writing, because if it's in writing, you can always go back to it. Whereas unfortunately, a lot of people, and not necessarily deliberately, but a lot of these transactions are over the telephone or in person, quite old fashioned with a handshake. And then you come back to a situation where it's he said, she said, and no one has any proof. And then that's really difficult, because if it is a case that has to go to court, you're in a really tough position, because you're actually then relying on other people who may have heard what happened. So absolutely, I would get everything in writing, whether it's to confirm that they've said the horse can jump 1 meter happily, or whether it's that the horse is sound. I would just get everything in writing, because then you can always come back to it.
That's a really, really good bit of advice, and very, very good bit of advice. It doesn't even need to be a legal contract. It just needs to be, this is what you've told me.
Yeah, and just agreed between the two. I mean, if you can get their signature, by all means, but just have it in writing what's been said, because for example, if the seller doesn't want to sign it, then that should be a red flag anyway, because they told you this verbally, so why are they not happy to confirm it on a slip of paper?
Great advice, remember that one. And in terms of the advice you have given, what legal matter are you most proud of that you've helped a client with?
And I think this is quite a hard question, because all of the cases where you're able to help someone, or certainly for me, the cases in which you can help someone are, make you feel proud. And if the client can walk away happy, and that you've actually helped them, that's enough for me. It's just nice knowing that you've managed to resolve an issue and that they've walked away satisfied. So I know that probably sounds a bit cliche, but it's the truth.
Well, and it's what you wanted to do, to help people. So for those people who've been in the fortunate situation that they've never actually had to consult a lawyer before, and now they find themselves that they do, how does someone go about that? What's the process for getting advice, and how is it charged for? I think that's possibly something that maybe put people off, because they don't know what they're letting themselves in for. So what should people do if they think they need some help?
So we actually offer a short initial free consultation. So I do that because I know it can be quite daunting, especially an equestrian matter. Because I think it's more difficult when you're an individual and you've never approached a solicitor before. Maybe you've only ever used a solicitor for conveyancing to sell your house. And then it's quite daunting having to approach a solicitor, and you obviously are conscious of money. So I'm more conscious of individuals in that position. So what we do is I offer a free initial consultation. So it's normally about 30 minutes. So just an initial brief chat, basically, chat through what's going on, and just essentially talk about it, and just run through the ideas, have a chat about the position. Normally what we would do next is we would have a fixed fee meeting. So the meeting itself, which obviously would be virtual at the moment, is fixed fee. So that would be based on my hourly rate. So you know what you're getting yourself into before you have the meeting. In the meeting, I would then run through the legal aspects based on that kind of our initial chat and confirm my advice as to any next steps or what could be done. A lot of people, that's enough. They just need the initial advice and then they're happy to just go off and do it by themselves, which is perfectly fine. And then in other situations, maybe it's a bit more complex and maybe other things need to be done, in which case I then give a very kind of clear fee estimate moving forwards. So it's normally done based on hourly rates, depending on what's needed. So obviously it's a bit difficult because it depends case by case, but I tend to do a fixed fee to begin with to make it very clear so you know exactly what you're letting yourself into. And then obviously as things progress, we're very conscious of fee estimates and making sure it's transparent and clear. So I know sometimes solicitors have a reputation and people think that, a lawyer is really expensive, and that kind of puts them off getting legal advice. But actually getting the legal advice earlier can save you money in the long run, because sometimes it can get a bit out of hand.
And what you've described is they know what they're letting themselves in for before they incur the fees anyway.
Absolutely. Yes, yeah, absolutely. So we have to be very clear. I mean, even just the way we're regulated, we have to be very clear with fee estimates, and it's obviously very important for me and for people in general to be transparent about it, because it doesn't help anyone if you're not transparent. And obviously people want to know what's happening next and what happens next if this happens, if X happens, and then there's kind of various fee estimates for that. So it's something that's obviously really important to individuals and clients, and also really important to me. So I would always be very clear about what the steps were before we started. So obviously if somebody decided they didn't want to go ahead, then that would be
fair enough. No, exactly. Well, that's really clear. Thank you for explaining all of that.
That's okay.
So back to a little bit of horses.
Yes.
Who was your equestrian hero when you were growing up?
Yes, so my equestrian hero, I mean, so when I was little, I was always the person that was obsessed with the crazy ponies. So I've always had a penchant for the hotheads and the crazy ones. So I didn't really have a kind of hero as in, a top rider or someone that I regularly followed. But for me, it was more the case that I really admired the older people that got on the crazy ponies and controlled them, and I always really enjoyed watching people who were good at riding and had a good bond with their horse. And it was pretty much, I'm quite ambitious and I like improving myself. So that was kind of the reasoning behind that I'd always be on the lookout for, anyone else that I thought was riding really well, and then trying to kind of base myself on that, if that makes sense.
I think everybody watching this is going to agree with you. We're always looking to see, they're riding so nicely. How are they doing that? We're always trying. That self-improvement is very much there.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting, and especially as I've got older as well, I'm always really conscious of people's positions, and not necessarily in a judgmental way, but I just find it really interesting how different people ride. And I guess it's like anything, you pick some things up from other people and you add it to your kind of repertoire, and that's how it works. I think now, if I, maybe not a hero, but someone I really admire is Carl Cook in America. So he's a show jumper, and what I really like about him is that he's just really honest, and he just has a bond with a horse, and he says it how it is. And I think a lot of top riders and equestrians sometimes have, or people expect them to not be honest or to put on a front, but it's really nice when they can just be down to earth and speak about things how they are. For example, I watched a video the other day, and he was saying about how when you're little, you're taught to put your heels down at all costs, and that's all you have to think about, put your heels down. And actually that might not be the best way to ride. And I think it's nice to have those conversations, and for someone at that level to constantly be looking to improve himself as well. Yeah.
No, definitely. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And once we're out of this lockdown that we're coming towards the end of, what equestrian event are you most looking forward to this year?
So I was really looking forward to badminton.
Yeah, well,
yeah, so that was a bit disappointing. I was reading an article the other day about the poor people that had qualified for badminton, and now they've been told that they actually can't go, and that they're not going to get another place unless they get popped onto the qualifiers for next year. And so many people dream of going to badminton. It's really sad. So yes, I would have said badminton. I also really enjoy the horse trials at Blenheim Palace, because I just think beautiful to watch, and it's just lovely.
It's a great setting, isn't it?
It's just really nice setting, and it's really peaceful. And when I was little, I remember going up there and kind of standing next to the water jumps, because they leave them there all year round, and thinking, oh my god, they're so big. So yeah, that I would really like to go to Blenheim, but maybe 2022. Fingers crossed.
Well, hopefully Blenheim this year, and with the new organizer being the Jockey Club, we're all looking forward to that very much.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
So we're just going to finish with a couple of quick fire questions to really get to know you. What did you have for breakfast this morning?
Oh, I had Weetabix this morning.
And what are you watching on TV or box set right now?
So at the moment, I'm watching The American Office, which is hilarious, although I'm a few years out of date. But it's just one of those things you can just watch whenever and enjoy. Yeah,
it is. What's your go-to drink on a Friday night?
It'd have to be a rum and coke.
Oh. And what was the last thing you bought for your horse?
Oh, a martingale, because he does not realise how old he is.
And if I was to give you a blank check, what extravagant equestrian item would you treat your horse to?
Do you know what? I feel like this probably isn't the response that you're wanting, but I would really love to buy a massive equestrian property, have them on site, and maybe get a few other horses too.
Well, Ellen, it has been brilliant meeting you today and chatting to you. You've given everybody some really, really good advice there. And, so basically write it down, get it in writing. If you're buying a horse, get it in writing.
Yeah.
And we look forward to catching up with you very soon.
Yes.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Tara.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.